The US is going to trigger a dollar reset. I mean, they have to, and it will impact everyone who holds cash, stocks, has a retirement account, even gold and silver holders. Although for us, it might be a good thing if we play it right. More on that in a minute. But first, let's talk about why they want to trigger a reset. So right now, they owe 39 trillion in debt, almost 40 trillion. And it's such a big number that it's kind of stopped meaning anything, really. But there's only three ways out of a hole that deep. They can raise taxes enough to clear it, which they're not going to do. They can cut spending enough to clear it, which they're definitely not going to do. Or they can do the third thing, scam the American people and everyone around the world, really, by devaluing and resetting the dollar. Which option do you think they're choosing? I mean, it's obvious. So today we're going to talk about how the US Treasury is about to pull off the greatest scam in the history of finance and how you can protect against it. If you don't know me, my name's Nick. I've been a professional investor and unprofessional trader for 25 years. None of this is financial advice, and it's not an inducement to buy or sell any assets. And as always, do not take financial advice from some random bloke on YouTube. Anyway, before we talk about gold and silver, we need to talk about the dollar reset. An important reminder, the dollar isn't backed by anything. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by silver. It's not backed by anything you can hold. It's just a piece of paper or a digit on a screen. It used to be backed by something, but not anymore. So today, a dollar is worth something purely because everyone agrees it is, and because the government says so. It's a shared belief, and that's the whole thing. It sounds abstract, but it's the most important part of this entire video, because if money is only worth what people believe it's worth, then whoever controls the supply of it can quietly chip away at that value whenever they fancy it, and you barely feel it happening because it's happening 1 year at a time over a long period. So first, let's talk about how big this hole is really. And the honest way to measure a country's debt is against the size of its economy. Think of it like a mortgage. $200,000 of debt is terrifying if you earn $20,000 a year, and it's nothing if you earn $2 million a year. So we compare the debt a country has to everything the country produces in a year. That's called the debt to GDP ratio. So right now, the US sits at about 122% debt to GDP ratio. The debt is bigger than the entire economy. And the last time it was that high was 1946, right after America had finished fighting World War II. But then it made sense because they borrowed a fortune to win an actual world war. This time around, they borrowed for what? I don't even know, because they shouldn't have borrowed that much. And the debt isn't even the scariest part of this all. It's the interest on the debt. The government now pays more every year just to service this debt than it spends on its entire military, over $1 trillion. The fastest growing thing in the budget isn't roads or defense or healthcare. It's paying off the interest on the debt. Paying off interest on money that they borrowed and blew. Actually, here's something that blows everyone's mind when I talk about it. China is a massive holder of US debt, although they've been decreasing their holdings of US debt over the last decade. Now, when the US pays interest on its debt, some of that interest has to go to China because they hold the debt. Think about what that means. China lends money to the US pays them interest, which then China uses for things like funding its military, which one day might have to fight the US military. So they're kind of funding their rival. It's a crazy world, this whole debt system. Anyway, US debt is so high that it is now impossible for the US to pay it back. Well, almost impossible. How do you make $39 trillion of debt shrink without paying it back and without telling anyone you're doing it? This is the trick at the center of everything. So let me explain this slowly. I'm going to slow down a little bit. It's called financial repression. When you lend money to the government, you buy something called a US Treasury or a Treasury bill or a bond, and they pay you interest. Let's say they pay you 4% interest. But that 4% on its own means nothing. What matters is the 4% compared to inflation. If prices are rising at, let's say, 3% a year, then you earn 1% because you earn 4%, then the inflation is 3%. 4 minus 3 is 1%. If prices are rising at, say, 6% per year, then you're actually losing 2% per year because 6 minus 4 is 2, right? So even though the number in your account is going up, you're earning money in your account, that money is purchasing less. Now, if the government can hold interest rates below inflation, then everyone lending the money loses a little bit of value every single year. And here's the flip side of that. While you slowly lose value, the government debt is shrinking in real terms, year after year, without a single dollar ever being paid back. They inflate away the debt by printing loads of money. The savers, the pension funds, regular people holding bonds, they eat the loss and never get told what's happened. And by eat the loss, I mean that their dollar every year purchases less. I'm sure you've noticed this when you go to the supermarket to do your shopping or you pay your bills. Shit's gotten very, very expensive, right? I mean, it's happening all over the world. I'm sure you've noticed. And that's the trick. It's actually called negative real rates. It's a hidden tax. You never voted for it. It doesn't show up on your pay slip, but it's a hidden tax you're paying. Now, the reason I'm telling you this isn't, this is not a theory. This is the actual numbers we're dealing with today. The interest rate right now that the Fed controls is sitting at 3.6%. Inflation, the official number for inflation, is about 3.8%. So 3.6 minus 3.8 minus 0.2. So right now, the rate is below inflation. The real rate just dipped below zero. So basically, inflation is so high that even if you're holding one of the safest forms of debt, US Treasuries, you're losing money right now. But I mean, depending when you bought anyway, it doesn't matter. But this is their scam strategy. They can't repay the debt, so they just inflate it away. And if that sounds far-fetched, that a government would quietly inflate away a mountain of debt without anyone noticing, I mean, they've done it before. Go back to 1946. America comes out of the World War with the same debt load we just talked about, around about 120% of the economy. Everyone expects decades of pain to pay it down. But they never paid it down, not really. Instead, they just held interest rates so low, let inflation run hot through the 40s and the 50s, and they just let the debt erode. By 1974, that mountain had shrunk from 120% of the economy all the way down to 30%. But the bill came due, and that was a bad decade for the US. The 70s was horrible for the US. Unless you held gold, then it was a good decade, a really good decade. I mean, I'm sure my editor will throw up the gold chart. And this is why I keep talking about gold. Every single time the government has pulled a stunt like this, a mini reset, I call these mini resets. And I'm going to go through the three mini resets and the upcoming major reset that I believe is about to happen. Every time they've done a mini reset in response to massive stress on the dollar, every time gold has done the same thing. It's went flying up. So the first time was the Great Depression. The government literally made it illegal for ordinary Americans to own gold. It took it off them and then changed the official price of gold from $20 an ounce after it took it off them to $35 an ounce. Overnight, by decree, they wiped roughly 40% of the value of the dollar against gold. So if you held dollars, you got poorer in a single afternoon. If you held gold, you didn't. But of course, the scam then was that they took your gold, they gave you dollars for it, and then they devalued those dollars and raised the price of gold. It's crazy. That was the first time, and gold went up, right? So the second was in 1971 when President Nixon goes on television on a Sunday night and tells the whole world the dollar is no longer backed by gold. He called it temporary, and we're still on that temporary measure 55 years later. What followed was a decade of inflation, and the US dollar rapidly lost value through insane printing. And that was the second mini reset. Although the correct term for this is actually a monetary regime reset, although I like mini reset better, it sounds better. So in that mini reset from the 70s, gold climbed from $35 to $850 over the next few years. Then came 2008. This is the third mini reset, and this is the most recent one. So in 2008, the financial system nearly dies. The response is zero interest rates and trillions of freshly printed dollars. Gold actually crashed at first in the panic. It dropped around 30% and everyone wrote it off. Then it ran from $700 to $1,900. It nearly tripled, while the people who panic sold the bottom, they kind of got screwed. So that's three mini resets, 1934, 1971, and 2008, or 1974 and 2008. Three different decades, three different excuses for the resets, but it's the same shit every time, really. They debase the dollar and gold goes up because the money it's priced in is worth less. So we're standing right at the start of the next one, but I think this isn't going to be a mini reset. I think this is going to be a pretty big reset. It's not mini when you have $40 trillion in debt that has to disappear. This will be a great reset, or not great, it'll be a major reset, a bad reset. So who do we actually point the finger at for this? It's tempting to blame, one president or one Fed chair, but that's too easy. It's not Trump, it's not Biden, it wasn't Obama, it's all of them. It's the reckless spending over decades decades and decades from politicians. And it's not even just the US, it's every country around the world. They spend money the country doesn't have with no plan to ever pay it back. They won't raise taxes enough to cover it because raising taxes loses elections, although in the UK they do raise taxes all the time. They won't cut spending enough to cover it because that loses elections too. So every year they borrow the difference and pass the tab straight on to you because you're the one that ends up paying the bill in the end. The spending is the actual crime here. Everything else is the repression. That's just the cover up. So you never quite notice the money in your pocket just quietly being debased, quietly buying you less every single year. And this is where it stops being an abstract debt number and it starts landing on real people, because it doesn't land on everyone the same. When new money gets created, it doesn't show up in everyone's account at once. It comes in at the top with the banks and the big funds, the people sat closest to the tap. Then they get the fresh money first while it's still worth its full value, and they spend it on assets, on shares, on property, on gold. By the time that money comes down to me and you, to the normal people, the value of it is gone down a lot. So picture two people. One owns a pile of assets, a house, some shares, a bit of metal, a fair bit of metal if you're smart. The other just earns a wage and keeps their savings in the bank. The exact same money printer lifts the first person up and grinds the second person down at the same time off of the same event, really. And that's the transfer right there. It's not a side effect of the reset, it's the whole point of it. And which side you are on comes down to one thing. Do you own assets or do you just hold cash? Now, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you how this whole thesis could be wrong, because it genuinely could be. So I need to tell you the opposite side of it. There's one way out of this that doesn't involve melting the dollar's value, and we've watched it work once before. His name was Paul Volcker. Early 1980s, the inflation was so out of control, Volcker did a brutal, it was a fairly honest thing. He jacked up interest rates up to nearly 20%. He deliberately caused a vicious recession. People lost jobs, businesses went under. It was a genuinely painful time for the US, but it worked. He crushed inflation, he rebuilt the world's trust in the US dollar, and the value of money was saved, although the problem was for gold. Gold kind of got destroyed. I mean, it spent like 2 decades pretty flat. It went down and then spent 2 decades pretty flat. So this all comes down to one question. What do we do? What do smart people do in a situation like this? If we expect that Kevin Walsh is going to come in and he's going to raise rates and it's going to kill gold, then, probably best not to be in gold, but he's probably not going to do that. So what do? Well, we plan for that eventuality just in case he does, and we're ready to perhaps reduce our gold exposure, our silver exposure, but we're just ready for that. That's not what the plan is. The plan is they're going to inflate away this debt. They're going to print a lot of dollars, especially if the economy breaks, especially if the AI bubble bursts, which, is probably going to happen. So the plan for me anyway this is not financial advice, talk to your financial advisor, is to start stocking up on metals, because what always does well in a recession, what always does well in a mini reset, well, that's what we've been talking about. Gold, silver, and copper to an extent, but copper after it goes down, then it goes back up. But gold, silver, they do well in a mini reset or in a major reset because a shit ton of cash is being printed. You can't print gold and everyone flocks back to gold. So that's why I'm big on gold, guys. And that's why I hate companies like them. Anyway, I hope this video was informative. If you have any questions, drop them below. If you have any comments, drop them below. If you think I'm wrong, drop it below. I'm happy to chat about this. I'm happy to discuss this. I leave voice notes for almost all my comments because I love chatting back and forth with you guys. I'll see you on the next one.